This is the Ugreen NAS. I just bought it from their website, and when I was looking on YouTube, I was struggling to find any reviews that weren't gifted or sponsored. So here's an unbiased review to answer the question, is it any good? Quick, too long didn't watch up front. If you're a techie and you're looking for something to tinker with, then I think the Ugreen NAS is a great platform. If you're looking for something that will replace something like Google Drive or iCloud, then it's a little bit more complicated, and I'll get into it in the software section. In this review, we're going to go through a few key areas that might help you make your decision. First, we'll look at the hardware, then we'll look at the energy consumption. From that, we can work out the total cost of ownership. We'll look at the software, and then I'll wrap up with my conclusions and what I'm going to use it for next. So firstly, just to touch on why I bought it, this is going to be an offsite backup server for me, and it's going to run at a family member's house. So my two really important considerations were had to be power efficient because energy here in the UK is still really expensive. So we need to make sure that it's not adding loads of cost to their electricity bill. And secondly, it has to look nice and be quiet. We can't have any janky Raspberry Pi setups with USB discs hanging out the back and things like that. Okay, let's look at the hardware and the build. So as you can see, it's really sleek, really nice design. Got no complaints with the build at all. It's a really good compact little unit. You could easily put this next to your TV or next to a broadband router or something like that, and it wouldn't look out of place at all. The casing is a nice metal construction, and it's got a lot of heft to it actually. The drive caddies are satisfying to take in and out, and it's also got two NVMe slots, which is a real plus point to me. I'll be honest though, it has been years since I've had a 3.5-inch hard drive running, and while there's some nostalgia factor to it potentially, it's pretty annoying. It's not a negative for this NAS versus any other comparable NAS. In fact, I think this does quite a good job of minimizing the noise, but really do question where you're going to put this and if you really need 3.5-inch hard drives. If you have this on the desk next to you or on your TV unit, you might be hearing those drives and they're probably going to be quite annoying. It's funny, and this is definitely modern world problems, because when I used to have a 3.5-inch hard drive in my computers, I never really thought about it. It was never a problem. But now going back from the silence to that really irritating spinning and clicking noises, it definitely starts to grate on you. I don't think I could have this next to my desk. It's not a deal breaker though, and depending on your use case, if you're going to have it within earshot, perhaps just think about whether it's worth paying the extra to get some laptop drives or some SSDs instead. So in the same price range, I looked at the QNAP TR002 and the Synology DS223. And they're both plastic constructions. The hardware is significantly worse, and there's not really any way you can change the software or upgrade them. So whilst they're a similar price, the capabilities that you get out of the box are just nowhere near. I already run Intel N100 PCs at home, and that's the same chip that's used in this NAS, and that's more than capable of running all your home services, Jellyfin, Nextcloud, things like that. One last consideration with the hardware is you might have seen Intel have now released the Intel N150 chips, which replace the N100s. They're the older model. And you could potentially wait for Ugreen to update their NAS. They'll probably, I expect, have one in the future with their N150. But for me, in my use case, there wasn't any point in waiting because, yeah, it might be a little bit faster. Some reports say it's maybe 10, 20, even up to 30% faster for some workloads. But the N100 can do absolutely everything that I need it to do. You can easily host your services, you can easily transcode media 4K to your TV and things. So for me, there wasn't any benefit in waiting for that N150 chip to come along. Depending on your use case, it might be worth waiting for, but for me, there wasn't any point in waiting. Looking at the power usage, I used a TP-Link Tapo smart plug to do all the measurements. Yeah, it's not that accurate, but I think it's good enough to give us a ballpark figure of where these are running at. And great news is that Ugreen have got these NASs running at 5 watts idle. So without any disks installed, without anything running on the NAS, it's just sitting there using only 5 watts, and I think that's a fantastic achievement. First I tried adding a 250 gig WD Green disk, and these are energy efficient drives, and adding that disk adds only 1 watt to the load, so that meant it was running at 6 watt average. Now came the time to add an 8TB Ironwolf drive, and I chose this one because it was a 5400 RPM version, which is lower power usage and lower noise. So this bumped the power consumption up all the way to 11 or 12 watts. This wasn't when the drive was in use, being written to or read from, that's just the extra cost of having the disk spinning. So luckily Ugreen have a feature that allows you to spin the disk down when it's not in use. So when it's not being read or written to, you can power that device down. And when we do that, we're idling at just 7 watts. So it seems pretty similar that every disk we add maybe adds about 1 watt. So that's a good reason to not overspec your device and not have too many disks running. If you can get away with fewer, bigger drives, you probably save some energy efficiency. Some people say that you shouldn't be spinning your disks up and down all the time, and the minimum timeout that Ugreen allows is 10 minutes. So it's not like the disk is going to be starting and stopping continually, but it does allow you to get a nice bit of peace and quiet and save a bit of energy when you're not using them. So for me personally, I'm really happy with a 7 watt idle. I think that's great, especially for the amount of storage that we're getting for that. And Ugreen actually went even further, and they've got a schedule that you can apply to the device that allows it to power on and power off. So you could turn it off when you're asleep, you could turn it off when you're out at work, and just set a schedule for it to come on at a certain time of day. Now, even cooler, in their mobile app, Ugreen have added a feature that allows you to press a wake on LAN button. So if you're in your home network, you can press that button and it will boot the NAS from the network, and within 2 minutes, you're good to go. I think this is a really cool feature that they've added. I don't think it's going to work with TrueNAS, unfortunately, and it definitely won't be useful for me because this is going to be an offsite device. But I think that's a really good way of reducing your energy costs rather than just having it running 24/7 when you're not at home. So looking at the cost of ownership, I'm going to have to refer to my notes here. In the UK with that 7 watt idle, I think we're looking at 61.3 kilowatts per year. And with the current energy price of 28p, that means we'll be looking at £17, 16p a year. So just under £1.50 a month in electricity cost here. Obviously, it's going to use a little bit more energy when it's in use, but for me, because it's an offsite backup, it's going to be very rarely used and it's just going to receive data overnight. So when we think about the total cost of ownership, I'm looking at this over a 5-year period, which I think is quite realistic. Yeah, the disc is only warranted for 3 years, but hopefully we'll be in a good spot for 5 years. The purchase price of the NAS is £247. The disk drive was £160, and the power usage over 5 years would be £85. So that works out at £492 over 5 years, which I think is pretty good. If you wanted to have this in your house, for example, to have 8 terabytes of storage at home, then you're probably going to need to consider that you're going to need your own offsite backup. So you might want to get 2 of those. And in that case, you'd be looking at £984 in total. I wanted to compare that to cloud subscriptions, and I looked at Apple pricing, which is what I primarily use. And for iCloud, 2 terabytes is £8.99 a month, and over 5 years that works out at £539.40. If you're not storing too much data, then going the self-hosted route isn't probably very cost effective because you're spending about 2 times as much money. But if you go for iCloud 6 terabytes, then that's £26.99 a month, and that works out at £1,619. From that, you get more storage that you actually control, and it's going to be cheaper. People will argue back and forth probably about whether cloud storage is equivalent to a home NAS. You get a lot more redundancies. You pretty much guarantee that your data isn't going to get corrupted and broken unless something happens to your account. And this is one of the primary reasons I'm looking at self-hosting my own data, is if you trust the cloud providers, you're still going to need your own backup anyway, because we've got cases where people's accounts are being deleted or suspended for oftentimes things that they haven't done anything wrong and they've just been picked up for something that's happened on their account. And if your Google account, for example, got deleted with your email and all your data, what are you going to do? I don't think that it's an either or situation. I think they both have positives and negatives, but when you consider that if you're storing a large amount of data, it probably will work out cheaper, I think it's a worthwhile hobby to invest in. Comparing it to the competitor product I mentioned earlier, the QNAP was right around £180 when I checked, and the Synology was £250, so almost the same as the Ugreen. And for that, you're getting about a quarter of the RAM, you're getting nowhere near the processing power. The idle power usage is pretty similar. You might be able to save a watt or two here or there, but you get nowhere near the capabilities that you get from Ugreen for the price, but their software is potentially better. So software really is the most important thing when it comes to choosing your NAS, and this is going to determine if the Ugreen is right for you, because with the Ugreen you can run alternative operating systems such as Unraid or TrueNAS, and I'm personally going to be running TrueNAS on this. So I don't really care about the Ugreen software, and it's getting replaced anyway. But if you're hoping to rely on that software, then it's a little bit tricky. So I'll just explain that now. Firstly, I want to detour to the privacy and security. First of all, when you sign up, you have to agree to their privacy policy. And the first thing I did was just search for data to see what they're doing with the data. And it was really good to see that they explicitly say that they don't collect your data, they don't process your data, and they have no access to it. So whilst that might not be true, who knows, it's really nice that they explicitly set that out in their policy. The NAS can be used just on your local network, so it doesn't need any internet connection to operate, or you can use the Ugreen Remote Connect feature that allows you to connect from your phone or from your computers when you're away from the house. I didn't set up the remote access because that's not something that I'm interested in, but if you do want to go that route, regardless of which provider that you choose, just make sure that you set good passwords and that you do the software updates, because that's usually how people get their devices compromised, when people can log in remotely. So some people don't trust it because it's Chinese, but to me, I would say I wouldn't trust anybody to remotely access my data. And that's really the big reason why so many people are switching away from American big tech companies in the first place. You've got companies like Amazon Ring where their employees are just looking at people's home videos. So I wouldn't say it being from China is a problem. Definitely use that mindset with any things that you purchase. So looking at the NAS server itself, the software that's running on it seems really good, feature complete for a NAS. You can pull out drives at will and put them back in, and it will just continue as it is. There's no issues with it crashing or having to rebuild for ages. So as long as you're using it as a standard NAS, you'll have no problems with the Ugreen OS as it runs. A really cool little feature that I've seen they've got is you can plug this into a TV via HDMI port, and you can actually then cast TV shows or movies or videos files from your phone straight to the TV. And that's a nice little touch, I think. The setup itself is really straightforward. You just follow the prompts. One downside is if you don't enable the remote access, every time you log in, it says that you need to enable it, and that's getting a bit tedious. And once you get it set up, you can enable SSH and an SMB share, and after that, you can just log straight into it. This actually gave me a good amount of confidence because when logged into it via SSH, it's just a Debian box and you can get to sudo, so you can root around and have a look how things work. It seems unlikely to me that they're hiding anything untoward when they're giving you so much access to it. Lastly, you can then install Docker either via the web app or via the shell, and from there you can install all the applications that you're familiar with. Okay, looking at the client software, and this is where things start to break down, unfortunately. The best way to use the NAS is really via an SMB share. So on your computer, you can just connect to a remote share and transfer your files back and forth, absolutely no problem. They have a Mac app, and I installed that hoping that it might be a bit like Google Drive or Nextcloud where it syncs your files across, but unfortunately that's not the case. It's literally just a packaged version of the web app that you get. It allows you to control the NAS and things, but really there's no benefit to installing that at all. And seeing that all of the text was still in Chinese on the menus makes me think they don't really think that people are going to use this. The iPhone app was pretty similar. So on the App Store, there's only 6 reviews of the app, 2 of which have any text on them. So it really doesn't look like many people are using this. It's fine if you want to just restart the NAS, or like I showed the Wake on LAN feature, which I think is really cool. You just want to start it. I tried using the photos capability to send some photos from my phone, and some reason doesn't work unless you enable all photo access. I don't know why that would be the case. There isn't any sort of technical restrictions for that to be required. And again, I don't think it's malicious. I think it's just that they don't really expect people to use that software and they haven't spent much time optimizing it. I think if you want to host your own photos, going with something like Image or Photo Prism will give you a really good experience, and you can install that via Docker. So it's almost like Ugreen would be better off just helping support those projects, but there might be licensing reasons and things that they can't install it out of the box. So in conclusion, I'm really happy with this little box. I think it's going to be perfect to just leave running 24/7 in our family member's house, and it's not going to impact them, it's not going to cause any problems, and I'm hoping it's going to last a really long time. Obviously, I'll update in the description or the comment if I have any issues with it over time. My next video will be installing TrueNAS on this and seeing how I get on with using ZFS. So if you want to see more tech content or self-hosting content, then subscribe and give me a thumbs up. If you just want me to get back to sim racing content, then give it a dislike. Either way, leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.